Okay, well, thank you for inviting me to speak to you today. My name is Dragan Radic, and I'm Senior Specialist for Employers Activities from ILO office here in Budapest in Hungary. Now, today I'll talk to you about three things, really. First, before we talk about this work in sustainable development, I think it would be good and important to give you a bit of update, to provide some kind of understanding what is the International Labour Organization, and then we'll talk about decent work and employment, importance of employment creation, and then finally just concluding with employers' organizations, private sector, and importance of the private sector in supporting SDGs. Because I assume that not many of you are very familiar with the ILO. So I will tell you just a couple of points about the International Labour Organization. So our organization was created in 1919. It is a very special and probably the oldest UN agency. Yeah, we have 187 member states, and we are very different than any other UN organization. Why? Because we do not work only with the governments, but we also work with representatives of employers, or we call them employers or business organizations, and representatives of workers, trade unions. And that's also important, of course, because the world of work is the world of employers and workers. And the government is there to regulate that world, but it is employers and workers that live in it. So that's why we have this tripartism, as we call it. And our organization has really a mandate for promotion of social justice in the world. You know, when we're talking about social justice, we're talking about minimum fairness in society, but also minimum fairness at the workplace. And our organization actually received the Nobel Prize in 1969 for promotion of peace and social justice in the world. So that is really who we are. And just a couple of principles also relevant to decent work. We believe that universal and lasting peace can be established only if it's based on social justice. So if people are treated unfairly, if millions of people cannot get a job, especially young people, sooner or later there will be unrest. This is social injustice, and obviously we are concerned about that. The other important principle: labor is not a commodity. You know, yes, you buy raw materials when you're in a business, you buy electricity, you source various things, but labor is not simply something that you trade. You know, the other principle, important one, it's freedom for expression and freedom of association. What does that mean? You know, people today do not only come to work. They want to provide their opinions. They want to be consulted. And freedom of association, it's a critical labor standard, important one, where the people or workers can actually form and join organization of their own, whatever they want, what kind of organization they want. Usually they are trade unions, to promote and defend their own interest. And finally, you know, all human beings, irrespective of who they are, race, creed, or sex, should have equal opportunities. So these are the key principles, global principles that we are pushing. Now, let's now move down to this employment creation and decent work, which is very relevant to what you might be doing later on. And the decent work is described in SDG goal number 8, which is basically aiming to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. Now, I have to say, I mean, although we are saying this is SDG goal, this goal is so ambitious that I would even dare to say it's almost like a powerful, inspiring vision. Because we are saying here that by 2030, we are going to achieve full and decent employment. That means that 600 new million jobs will need to be created in 15 years. It's quite challenging, actually. Now, but employment creation in itself, it's really the engine of development. And this is the key. It is really the key of achieving the goals of decent living standards. Social and economic integration, but also personal fulfillment. As I said, people don't just come to work to make money. They want to actually engage. They want to be consulted. They want to be happy at work. They want to add value. Okay, so let's look at how difficult is the problem then. And I'm not saying that I'm pessimistic, but just to put it into perspective. Now, today in the world, we have more than 200 million people who are very, very keen to work, but they cannot work because they cannot find the jobs. Now, to make it even worse, out of those, 73 million young people are unemployed. Now, for example, in Europe, every fourth young person is unemployed. In our sub-region here in Central and Eastern Europe, we have countries where the unemployment of young people is over 50%. So this is really a major, major concern. And then, to make it even worse, there is about 327 million people in the world that are working, but earn less than $1.90 per day. So they are virtually poor, very, very poor. They are below poverty line. Now, we have a problem still with child labor. 168 million kids are actually not in school, but they're working today, and that's not acceptable. And surprisingly, we thought that forced labor, but now, 21st century, should be over, but we still have more than 20 million people that are victims of forced labor. We are not talking necessarily about people being in chains, but, for example, bonded labor, where the employer takes passport or ID cards away and therefore force you to work for him or her for a number of years. That's also considered as a forced labor. So that is the problem. Now, today, unfortunately, 6,300 people will die as a result of occupational accident or disease, and every day in a year. Another problem is when it comes to social protection. Less than a third people in the world, only 27%, has have adequate access to social protection. So this is the area which is really, it's a major, major concern, especially as population is growing in some countries, and we have a massive age in other parts of the world. And finally, we still have a problem with gender. In many, many countries, women are paid between 10 and 30% less than men for work of equal value. Let's look at what people are saying. What are the top priorities for people in the world? I mean, there is this UN World Survey that it's ongoing. And now, I mean, this is a bit old. Now we have around 10 million votes, but still the situation is the same. Jobs are among top 3 priorities. People want first good education, good healthcare, and then good job opportunities. These are the key issues for people in the world at the moment, according to this survey. Now, let's again come a little bit down, because we're talking big global issues here. So let me try to actually give you a definition of a decent work. What do we mean? What is decent work? Now, that's the work that really gives you fair income. Really fair income, the income where you can really live on. That provides security in the workplace. You go to work, not to lose a hand or leg or your life, and to provide a social protection for you and for your family. This decent work gives you opportunity for personal development and social integration. Also, it should give you opportunity to express your concerns, to be consulted, to organize yourselves with other group of workers, if you wish so, and to participate in relevant decisions, that are relating to your life at work. And finally, decent work is the work that should provide equal opportunity and treatment to all. How do we actually then go from definition of decent work to delivering decent work in the world? Now, the ILO decent work agenda has really 4 inseparable and mutually supportive strategic objectives or pillars. We focus on employment creation, of course, so we work with a number of countries and help them to develop employment policies, to enhance their employment services, to develop SME strategies. Directly, we work with enterprises as well. Another pillar is a pillar of social protection. We're looking here social security, but also occupational health and safety. Now, when it comes to standards and rights at work, I think this is how people would recognize us in the world, as we are the only global organization that sets international labor standards. They come in 2 forms, conventions and recommendations. So when the country ratifies a convention, then it has obligation to actually change the national legislation to bring it in line with the convention and to report back to us, depending on what kind of convention I'll be talking about, if it's the core labor standard, every 2 years, otherwise every five years, how the convention is really followed in practice and in the law in the country. And finally, very important also, pillar is the social dialogue. As I said, the world of work is the world between workers and employers. So we call them social partners, and they discuss amongst themselves the issues that are relevant to them. The most famous example, obviously, is collective bargaining agreements between workers and employers. But sometimes there are also tripartite agreements nationally or even regionally in Europe, for example, that are looking issues like youth unemployment. And of course, we never forget gender equality and non-discrimination. That's always there as a cross-cutting issue. So that's our decent work agenda. And then how do we move from there to actually implementing the agenda? How do we actually implement this in practice? When it comes to the national level, we have a so-called decent work country programs, which are actually strategic plans, pretty much agreed between us and the constituents in the country, what we are going to work on in the next couple of years. And together, right? And usually we are talking about several priorities. Employment, creation, enabling business environment, it's usually there. Enhancing social protection, enhancing social dialogue. These are the common priorities. One that we always have, and it's important one, is relating to building capacity of social partners, building capacity of those representing employers and workers in the country so that they can engage in a meaningful way to support this decent work agenda, but also today now and to support sustainable development goals. And my last slide, because I'm going to stick to my 15 minutes, is how do we then actually connect all these with the private sector? Where is the link? So you would be aware by now that SDGs are different than MDGs because the SDGs really recognize the importance of economic growth, of industrialization, of enabling business environment, innovation, and they recognize the critical role that the private sector needs to play to support SDGs, not only financially, I would say, but also private sector needs to believe that SDGs, achieving SDGs is super important for the world tomorrow. Now, employers organizations or business representing organizations are those that represent collective and independent voice of business. Independent, it's important. They have to be independent of the government. So they have to think and have their own mind, you know. So what they do, they have usually 3 roles. They advocate for enabling business environment, you know, good, meaningful laws and legislations, taxation, infrastructure, etc., etc. So it's advocacy role. But they also need to provide concrete services to their members. Otherwise, members will not easily join. What kind of services we are talking about here? Human resource, for example, advice, industrial relations advice, occupational health and safety support, those kind of services. And finally, the third role is to promote and to protect interests of business in the country. Because in many countries, here, for example, in Eastern Europe, business is really considered, employers are considered as baddies, as villains. And that's not good. You know, we accept, of course, that some employers are not playing by rules of the games, and that's bad, you know. But most employers are actually good employers, and that should be, you know, taken on board. And employers organizations are really represent that critical link between the private sector and the government. This is the voice, this is the channel and we need to utilize that channel when it comes to promoting decent work agenda and sustainable development goals agenda. So my final point, concretely what we are doing with employers organization, my role as employers specialist is really to build capacity of those organizations. For example, recently we did the work on good governance, and I've seen you're going to have a presentation on that, and on strategic planning for employers organizations. So ensuring that these organizations walk the talk, that these organizations lead by example, meaning that they are more accountable to their members and that they are more transparent to their members. So yes, employers organizations should promote compliance. I mean, of course, this is natural with legal and ethical standards. That's what it should be done anyway. But what we expect, what we hope is that they're creating now also a business case. Why should private sector really engage with SDGs and to promote strongly those principles of accountability and transparency among businesses? So that's my 15-16 minutes. I will stop here, and I hope that was relatively clear. I mean, it's a big picture, but thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dragan. I think it was very clear and just reinforced the importance of when we are thinking about proposals to also take under consideration the importance of job creation, and that is not just a matter of any kind of job, but jobs in line what you describe as decent work. Now we have about 6 minutes before the people from International Finance Corporation will join us. What I would suggest that I need to reshuffle the order. I already got the agreement from the presenters that I can do that, but I wanted to use the next 6 minutes for possible questions, particularly for Dragan, because I don't know how long he can be online, or questions to me or Marie. So the floor is open. Don't be shy. You know the old expression, they are not bad questions, they are only bad answers. So as I said, the floor is open. I hope you also have mics, so that should not be a limit.
Thank you very much. We have a student with a question.
Hello.
Yes.
So I have a question to Dragan. So you are talking about decent work for all. So for me, one very important question is, shouldn't you start with better education opportunities? For example, to improve the situation for child labor, when, for example, the recent situation is that the parents can afford to bring to give the opportunity for the kids to school, so because they need to earn money, so they have to stop going to school and cannot improve their living because, or their future situation, because they have no education. Or even in Europe, in many countries, there's still education very expensive. For example, many people, I mean, of course they have the opportunity to do a for example, a bachelor degree, but for the master degree, there's no money anymore. So they're swimming in the pool of bachelor degrees, and the opportunity to get better jobs is smaller.
Mhm. Okay, any other questions, or shall I just... Okay, let me just answer that quick. I mean, you have raised a number of important issues. I mean, the one is with skills in general, you know. I think we have to start in many countries working with parents, because the parents are really talking to their kids and trying to tell them that the best jobs are those if you work for the government. You know? Here, for example, huge opportunities are missed in Eastern Europe. We see when it comes to entrepreneurship, no one is encouraged to be entrepreneur. So that's something where we need to work, for example, with parents, to start with parents first, and also to bring programs, and we have programs now about business, really to promote, for example, entrepreneurship from early ages, you know, elementary school and high school and things like that. When it comes to skills, the problem, though, that we have is the mismatch between supply and demand. Many countries are producing, even, I mean, you raised the point where maybe it's not easy to access the universities, but and I'll get to that. But when they go to universities, they obtain degrees that are pretty much useless, unfortunately, because no one cares. In a number of countries, no one cares what kind of degrees are being obtained. And we have situations, for example, in some Balkan countries here in Europe, that you know, there is a diploma factory of economists and lawyers that will never find a job. It's a problem, you know. On the other hand, some countries like Hungary, they need now 20,000 IT specialists. The economy cannot grow well in Hungary because they don't have enough of skilled workforce, and people are leaving, for example, also Hungary and going to work for Germany because the jobs are better paid. So there's lots of issues there. When it comes to child labor, yes, I think you're right. It comes to skills and it comes to parents, and we have done number of work in number of countries, like, for example, in Asia, and also here in Europe, I think in Moldova, where we actually first work with the parents and looked at the opportunities, how the parents could actually, in agricultural sector, how they could actually become more productive with their small farms in order to make some money so that kids can actually go to school. But I mean, these are big issues.